My name is Charles Smith, and I moved into that apartment because I couldn't afford not to. That's the part people don't want to hear when they ask why you didn't walk away, why you didn't notice the signs, why you didn't listen to your gut. The truth is simpler and uglier. Fear doesn't mean much when rent is due in 3 days and your checking account is hovering at double digits. I had just graduated. A communications degree I wasn't proud of, a resume that read like a list of apologies, and student loans that arrived with the enthusiasm of overdue bills pretending to be friendly reminders. I was working a contract job in Midtown, marketing analytics for a startup that kept calling itself a family while quietly replacing people every quarter. No benefits, no security, just enough money to keep me trapped. My previous apartment, if you could call it that, was a converted living room in Bushwick with a curtain instead of a wall. My roommate, Tyler, practiced DJ sets at 2 a.m. and kept asking if I was cool with random people crashing for a few nights. The answer was always no. The reality was always yes. When Tyler told me his cousin was moving in and I had 2 weeks to figure something out, I smiled and nodded like an adult, and then went into the bathroom and threw up. That night I opened Craigslist. I told myself I'd only look, that I wasn't desperate enough to fall for the horror stories. No scams, no weirdos, no too good to be true situations. I knew the rules. Everyone does. You don't send money without seeing the place. You don't trust listings with stock photos. You don't believe words like cozy or flexible or barely ever home. And then I saw it. Spacious 1BR sublet, quiet roommate, utilities included, $1,200. I stared at the number for a full minute, waiting for it to change. In Brooklyn, $1,200 got you a closet with ambition. This was listed as a one-bedroom, not a studio, not a flex, not a shared common area with respectful professionals. A real bedroom, a real living room, a kitchen with a door. I refreshed the page, same price. The photos looked real. Too real. Slightly crooked angles, bad lighting, a radiator with chipped paint, a window facing a brick wall that someone had still tried to romanticize with sheer curtains. It looked like someone actually lived there, not like a staging photo ripped from a real estate site. The description was short, almost careless. Pre-war walk-up. One roommate, works night shifts, barely home. You'll mostly have the place to yourself. No credit check. Sublet okay through end of year. Utilities included. Looking for someone chill, responsible. Need to fill ASAP. ASAP. That was the word that got me. I told myself there were reasonable explanations. Someone moving suddenly, a breakup, a job transfer. People didn't always have time to write polished listings. Not everyone was a scammer. Some people just wanted rent covered. I sent a message. Hi, I'm Charles, recent grad, working full-time in the city. Very interested. Can view anytime. I expected silence, or a bot, or a reply asking for a deposit up front. Instead, I got a response 10 minutes later. Hey Charles, sure. Can you come by tomorrow afternoon? No emojis, no exclamation points, no name signed at the bottom. That should have bothered me. It didn't. The building was in Crown Heights, 3 blocks from the subway on a street that smelled faintly like laundry detergent and fried food. Not trendy, not dangerous. The kind of block you forget as soon as you leave it. Brick walk-up, 4 stories, a narrow front door with a buzzing panel that had most of the names scratched off. The door was already unlocked. I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open, that little internal pause you get when something feels slightly off, but not enough to justify turning around. Inside, the stairwell was dim and smelled old, dust and heat and something metallic. I climbed to the 3rd floor, my footsteps loud in the quiet. Apartment 3B. The door was open. Hello, I called, my voice echoing in the hallway. A man stepped out of the apartment, already holding paperwork like he'd been waiting for me. Charles, he asked. Yes. I'm Mr. Haynes, he said. Landlord. He didn't offer to shake my hand. Just turned and walked back inside like it was assumed I'd follow. He was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, gray hair thinning at the crown, button-down shirt tucked into slacks that looked slept in. He smelled faintly of old coffee, the kind of man who blended into offices, who existed mostly behind desks and clipboards. The apartment was normal. That was the first thing that surprised me. No red flags jumping out. No mold creeping up the walls. Hardwood floors, worn but clean. Radiators under each window. A living room big enough for a couch and a desk. A kitchen with actual counter space. Not much, but enough to cook without elbowing yourself. This is the bedroom, Mr. Haynes said, opening the door to the larger room. It was empty except for a mattress leaned against the wall and a single lamp on the floor. Sunlight filtered through the window in a dusty stripe. I could picture my stuff here. That's how it gets you. The moment you imagine your life fitting into a space, logic starts packing its bags. And the other tenant? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Works nights, Mr. Haynes said, already moving toward the kitchen. Hospital security. Hardly here. What's his name? He paused, just for a fraction of a second. Evan Miller, he said. Quiet guy. You probably won't cross paths much. Probably. I walked through the apartment slowly, opening cabinets, checking outlets, looking for signs of water damage or pests. Everything looked fine. My brain kept circling back to that number, like a tongue worrying a sore tooth. Why so cheap? I asked finally. Mr. Haynes shrugged. Sublet situation. Not long term. Less hassle this way. That's it? That's it. He handed me the lease. It was thick. Too thick for a sublet. Pages and pages of clauses in fine print. My name typed neatly at the top. I hadn't given him my full name yet. I noticed that, but I didn't say anything. Utilities included? I asked. Yes. No credit check? No. And the other tenant is okay with this? He already signed. I flipped through the pages until I found Evan Miller's name. There it was. Clean signature, confident strokes, like someone used to signing things. Something about it made my skin prickle. When would I move in? I asked. Today if you want. I laughed, a short nervous sound. I'd need to grab my stuff. Fine, keys are here. He set them on the kitchen counter. A small ring. 3 keys. One labeled front, one apt, one bedroom. Bedroom singular. What about his room? I asked. Mr. Haynes didn't look at me. Locked. His space. I nodded. That made sense. Roommate boundaries. Normal. We went over the basics. Rent due first of every month. No parties, no smoking, quiet hours after 10. I skimmed the lease, my eyes glazing over the legal language. My brain was already calculating what I could pay off if this worked. How long I could breathe before the next crisis. Assigned. The pen felt heavier than it should have. When I finished, Mr. Haynes gathered the papers, slid them into his folder, and headed for the door. Welcome, he said, like it was an afterthought. And then he was gone. The apartment was silent. I stood there for a long time, keys in my hand, listening to the hum of the radiator and the distant sound of traffic outside. No footsteps, no voices, no sign of another person. I told myself Evan was asleep, or at work, or simply not home. I told myself a lot of things. That night, I moved my stuff in, 2 suitcases, a box of books, a laptop, a lamp. The sad inventory of someone still waiting for life to start. I set up my mattress on the floor, plugged in my phone, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the closed door across the hall, the other bedroom. I didn't hear anything. No movement, no breathing, no sign that anyone else existed on the other side. That should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like the apartment was holding its breath. I went to sleep, telling myself I'd finally caught a break. I didn't know yet that the apartment hadn't chosen me because I was lucky. It had chosen me because I would stay. I knew it was coming. That certainty settled over me sometime in the late afternoon, heavy and calm, like acceptance disguised as exhaustion. The apartment felt different now. Not watchful, not tense, prepared. I sat on the floor of my bedroom with my back against the dresser, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the building breathe around me. The hum was gone completely. In its place was a stillness so complete it rang in my ears. I checked my phone. No service, no Wi-Fi. Just the time. 6:18 p.m. I tried to remember the last full day I'd lived before moving here. Not just events, but sensations. The way the air smelled outside my old place. The sound of my roommate's laugh. The feeling of certainty that my body was unquestionably mine. The memories came slowly now, like files loading from a corrupted drive. Some opened cleanly, others froze halfway through and refused to resolve. I pressed my fingers against my wrist. The seam was faint, almost gone. That frightened me more than if it had been splitting open. I stood and crossed the room, moving carefully, deliberately, like I was learning how to inhabit myself all over again. The bedroom door loomed in front of me, the dresser still wedged against it. I hadn't heard anything all day. No movement, no footsteps, no breathing on the other side. That didn't mean it wasn't there. I slid the dresser back with a dull scrape and unlocked the door. The hallway waited, empty. The door across from mine, the other bedroom, stood open for the first time. I froze. Inside the room was bare. No bed, no furniture, no personal items. Nothing but smooth walls and a clean floor, like it had never been lived in at all. like it had never been meant for living. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding, until my shoulders hit the wall behind me. That was when the knock came. 3 taps, polite, measured. My knock. The one I used when I didn't want to bother anyone, when I wanted to be let in without making a fuss. My mouth went dry. "Charles," a voice said softly from the other side of the door. My voice. "Hey, you left the light on." I stared at the front door, my vision tunneling. "Let me in," the voice continued, gentle, almost amused. "I've been waiting to come home." Something inside me folded in on itself. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I walked to the door. Every step felt rehearsed, like my body already knew the choreography. My hand rose and hovered over the lock. A thought flickered through my mind, brief, weak, but mine. If I open it, this ends. The seam along my wrist tingled, not painfully, encouragingly. "You're tired," the voice said. "I can finish this." I rested my forehead against the door. "What happens to me?" I whispered. There was a pause. Then, softly, honestly, "You rest." My fingers closed around the lock. The click echoed too loudly in the quiet apartment. I opened the door. Not the version from the camera. Not the stretched, uncertain copy. This one was right. Posture corrected. Skin smooth and fitted perfectly. Eyes bright, steady, unafraid. He smiled. Not too wide. Just enough. I felt something loosen inside my chest. Something I'd been holding on to without realizing how much effort it took. He stepped forward. The apartment lights flickered once. And then, I'm not sure how much time passed after that. Days maybe, weeks. Time feels cooperative now. It moves when it's supposed to. I wake up every morning in the same apartment. I make coffee the same way. 2 bags, 4 minutes. No deviation. The seams are gone. My reflection doesn't lag anymore. Sometimes, when I pass the bathroom mirror too quickly, I think I catch a second version of myself, just behind the glass. Eyes tired, skin imperfect, mouth opening to say something important. But it never lasts. I hum in the shower without realizing it. That same tune, that same off-key note. The apartment feels right now, lived in, settled, like someone finally moved in properly. And every so often, when I'm unlocking the door at the end of the day, I feel a flicker of confusion, an echo of panic I can't quite place, like I've forgotten something, someone. But the feeling fades quickly. After all, if you live in New York long enough, you learn how to share space without acknowledging it. You don't make eye contact on the subway. You don't apologize when shoulders brush. You don't ask personal questions unless you're ready to hear something you can't unlearn. Privacy here isn't about walls, it's about agreements, unspoken ones. So when I didn't meet my roommate the first day, I told myself it was normal. Evan Miller worked nights. That was the explanation. Hospital security, graveyard shifts. People like that existed in a different rhythm, sleeping while the city screamed, waking while it whispered. It made sense that our paths wouldn't cross immediately. The second day passed the same way. I woke early for work, showered, dressed, and left the apartment quietly, careful not to disturb someone who might be sleeping behind that closed door across the hall. When I came back that evening, the apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. No new sounds, no sign of life. On the third day, I started noticing the silence. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was the quality of it. The way the apartment felt static, like a paused video waiting to be resumed. No television murmurs bleeding through walls, no music, no footsteps, no coughs, sneezes, phone calls, or the soft, accidental sounds people make when they forget they're not alone. The door to Evan's room stayed shut, always. I tried not to stare at it. That sounds ridiculous now, but at the time it felt rude, like staring at someone's bedroom door was the same as staring at their face too long. It was a boundary. I respected it. I respected it because that's what adults do. By the end of the first week, I realized something else. There were no signs of another person living there. The fridge contained exactly what I put in it. No leftovers in unmarked containers. No half-used condiments. No forgotten takeout. The trash filled only when I took it out. The bathroom sink never had toothpaste splatter, unless I made it. The shower drain never clogged with hair that wasn't mine. I checked the breaker box one night out of boredom. Every switch was labeled in neat printed handwriting. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, 1 bedroom. I told myself Evan must be minimal. Some people were, especially night workers. They lived light, kept things contained, didn't intrude. Maybe his room was stocked and self-sufficient like a capsule. Everything he needed, sealed away. That explanation worked, until I started sleeping better than I ever had. That part made no sense. The city usually seeps into you. Sirens, footsteps, neighbors arguing through thin walls. Even in quiet buildings, you feel the presence of others. It's comforting in a way, proof that you're not alone in the dark. But here, when I lay in bed, it felt like the rest of the building had been evacuated. No pipes knocking, no muffled laughter, no distant televisions. Just me, and the hum. At first I thought it was the radiator. Old buildings made noise. Groans, clicks, rattles. But this was different. It wasn't mechanical. It didn't change pitch or rhythm. It was steady, constant. So low I could almost convince myself it wasn't there at all. Almost. It followed me from room to room. Not louder, not quieter, just present. Like the sound you hear when you hold a seashell to your ear and tell yourself it's the ocean, even though it's really just your own blood moving. I slept deeply, too deeply. On the fifth night, I overslept my alarm by almost 2 hours. I woke up disoriented, heart pounding, sunlight already high through the curtains. I checked my phone in a panic, expecting missed calls or angry emails from my manager. Nothing. No notifications. No messages. Like time had simply skipped. I blamed exhaustion, stress, my body catching up after months of bad sleep. That explanation felt good. Relief has a way of smoothing over cracks. That morning, I finally decided to try something small. I wrote a note. Hey, it's Charles. Just wanted to say hi. Let me know if you need anything. I folded it neatly and placed it on the small table in the hallway, right outside Evan's door. Not touching the handle, not invasive, just enough to announce myself. The note stayed there all day and all night. The next morning, it was gone. No reply, no acknowledgement, just removed. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the bare tabletop, feeling something twist uncomfortably in my chest. Not fear, not yet. Something closer to being dismissed. I told myself he'd read it, tossed it, and moved on. Some people didn't do notes. Some people didn't do neighbors. That was fine. That was normal. I tried knocking once, later that week. Just a light knock. 2 taps. The kind you could pretend was accidental, if no one answered. Nothing. No footsteps. No voice. No sound at all. I put my ear near the door, feeling ridiculous even as I did it. Silence. Not even breathing. I pulled back quickly, suddenly aware of how strange I must look. A grown man listening at a closed door like a child checking for monsters. I laughed it off and went back to the living room. That was when I noticed the hoodie. It was folded on the couch. Not thrown there like I usually did. Folded, sleeves tucked in neatly, the tag facing inward. I stood there, keys still in my hand, trying to remember when I'd done that. I hadn't. I was sure of it. I'd worn it the night before. I remembered tossing it aside after getting home late, letting it slide off the armrest onto the cushion. I never folded my clothes unless I was packing or pretending to be productive. I picked it up. It was warm. That sent a small jolt through me, enough to make my breath catch. But warmth lingered. Fabric held heat. I'd probably touched it earlier without thinking. I told myself a lot of things. The next morning, the coffee maker was ready when I woke up. Not on, just prepared. Grounds loaded, filter in place. The carafe empty and clean. I stood there in my socks, staring at it like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. I hadn't done that. I was sure of that too. I checked the sink. No used filter. No damp grounds. Everything looked reset. Like someone had paused my routine halfway through and rewound it slightly. I didn't drink the coffee. I started locking my bedroom door when I slept. Not because I was afraid of Evan. That was the lie I told myself. I locked it because I was a light sleeper. Because boundaries were healthy. Because privacy mattered. The lock was flimsy. A simple turn latch. It made a soft click that sounded more symbolic than secure. Still, it made me feel better. For a while. The humming started the following week. At first I thought it was in my head. A phantom sound, like when you think you feel your phone vibrate in your pocket even though it's on the table. It came from the bathroom. Low, soft, tuneless. I froze in the hallway, toothbrush in hand, listening. The tune was familiar. Not a song you hear on the radio. Not something specific enough to place. Just a sequence of notes I recognized, because they were mine. A habit. A nonsense melody I hummed in the shower without realizing it. I listened, heart pounding, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. I stepped closer. The bathroom door was closed. The light beneath it was off. The humming drifted on, perfectly off-key at the exact moment I always went off-key. My mouth went dry. "Hello?" I called, hating how thin my voice sounded. The humming stopped. I stood there, every muscle tense, waiting for the door to open. It didn't. I reached for the handle and hesitated. A sudden, irrational certainty gripped me, one that made my skin prickle. that if I opened that door, something would be wrong in a way I couldn't undo. I don't know how long I stood there before the silence felt heavier than the fear. When I finally opened the door, the bathroom was empty, cold, exactly as I'd left it. The mirror reflected only me. I laughed then, a short, sharp sound that echoed too loudly in the small space, adrenaline looking for somewhere to go. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day at work, I mentioned it casually to my coworker Jenna Morales over microwaved leftovers and stale coffee. "Do you ever hear stuff in your apartment that freaks you out?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Like rats or ghosts? Like roommates you never see?" She laughed. "Dude, that's the dream." I laughed too, but that night when I got home, my bedroom light was on. I was sure I'd turned it off. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the soft glow spilling into the hall, listening to the hum of the apartment. It felt like the place was no longer waiting. It felt like it was settling in, and somewhere behind that closed door across the hall, someone was learning how I lived. People think horror announces itself. They imagine screams, shadows, doors slamming open in the middle of the night. Something obvious enough that you can point to it later and say, "That's when it started." That's not how it happens. It starts with details small enough to argue with. The first real one, the one I couldn't dismiss without effort, was the hoodie. I came home late from work, later than usual. A long day of meetings that went nowhere, followed by drinks I didn't want but felt obligated to attend. By the time I got back, I was exhausted in that dull, buzzing way that makes you clumsy. I remember shrugging off my jacket and tossing my hoodie onto the couch without looking. It slid off the armrest and landed in a loose heap on the cushion. I remember thinking I'd deal with it later. The next morning, it was folded. Not sloppily, not like someone trying and failing to be neat. It was folded carefully, sleeves tucked in, seams aligned, the way my mother used to fold laundry when I was a kid. I stood there in the living room, staring at it, coffee cooling in my hand. I replayed the night in my head. The door, the shoes, the couch. I didn't fold it. I knew I didn't. I checked my bedroom, half expecting to find some explanation waiting for me there. Maybe I'd brought it in and folded it absent-mindedly before bed. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. The bed was exactly as I'd left it. Sheets rumpled, pillow askew. I picked up the hoodie. It was warm. That detail bothered me more than the folding. Warmth meant recent contact. Fabric didn't hold heat long, not like that. I pressed it against my forearm, feeling foolish even as my pulse ticked up. "Get a grip," I muttered to the empty room. I hummed the hoodie in my closet and left for work, forcing myself not to look back. That day, I tried to pay attention to my habits. I watched myself the way you do when you're worried you've forgotten something important. Checking, double-checking, narrating actions in your head. I'm turning off the stove. I'm locking the door. I'm putting my keys in my pocket. That night, before bed, I deliberately left the hoodie on the back of the chair in my room. When I woke up, it was still there. That should have reassured me. Instead, it felt like a test had been passed. The coffee maker was next. I woke up earlier than usual, the city still quiet in that pre-dawn lull where everything feels temporary. I shuffled into the kitchen, half asleep, already thinking about caffeine. The machine was ready, not brewing, just prepared, filter in place, grounds measured perfectly, the carafe empty and clean. My first thought was that I'd done it the night before. My second thought was that I never did that. I stood there for a long time, staring at it like it might offer an explanation if I waited long enough. The sink was clean, no damp filter, no used grounds. It was like someone had paused my morning routine halfway through and left it there for me to finish. I didn't. I poured myself a glass of water instead and drank it standing up, watching the hallway from the corner of my eye. That was when I started locking my bedroom door during the day. Not all the time, just when I left for work, just in case. The lock was cheap, barely more than a suggestion. Still, it felt like drawing a line, something symbolic if nothing else. When I came home that evening, the door was unlocked. I froze with my key still in the knob, my heart thudding loud enough that I was sure someone else could hear it. I knew I'd locked it. I stood there, listening. The apartment was quiet. The hum was there, low and steady, but nothing else. No footsteps, no voices, no sound from the other bedroom. Slowly, I pushed the door open. Nothing was disturbed. My bed, my desk, my clothes, all untouched. I stood there for a long time, trying to decide whether relief or dread felt worse. That night, I dreamed I was late. Not late for anything specific, just late. Running through empty streets, checking my phone, knowing I was supposed to be somewhere without remembering where. When I woke up, my phone was on the nightstand. I didn't remember putting it there. I always charged it across the room, out of arm's reach. It was a habit I'd developed to keep myself from scrolling late into the night. The charger was unplugged. The phone screen was dark but warm. I sat up slowly, my mouth dry. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I started keeping notes after that. Nothing elaborate. Just a list in my phone. Things I know I did, things I know I didn't. It helped at first. Gave me something solid to hold on to, until the list stopped matching reality. One afternoon, I came home early, the sky already darkening outside the windows. As soon as I stepped inside, I smelled soap. Fresh, clean, the kind I used in the shower. The bathroom door was closed. My chest tightened. I stood there listening, every sense straining for movement. The hum seemed louder, closer somehow. Then I heard it. Humming. Low, soft, familiar. The same tune as before. The same off-key note at the same spot. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Hello?" I called. The humming continued. I took a step forward, then another, each one feeling heavier than the last. My hand hovered over the bathroom door handle. The humming stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space it left, thick and suffocating. I opened the door. The bathroom was empty. The shower curtain was dry, the sink untouched, the mirror clear. No steam, no warmth, nothing. I laughed again, louder this time, the sound brittle. "Real funny," I said, to no one. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself. Apartment forums, tenant advice threads, stories about bad roommates and weird landlords, and buildings with quirks. I didn't search for anything specific. Still, the stories felt uncomfortably familiar. I checked the lease again. Evan Miller's name stared back at me from the page, steady and confident. The signature looked the same as it always had. For the first time, I wondered when it had been signed. That thought stayed with me as I went to bed, curling up under the covers like I could make myself smaller. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of movement. Not loud, not obvious, just the faintest shift, like fabric brushing fabric. I held my breath, listening. The sound came again. From the living room. Slow, deliberate, like someone walking very carefully, very quietly, trying not to wake me. I stared at the door, my body rigid, my mind racing through explanations that didn't make sense even as I clung to them. Then it stopped. The hum returned, steady and calm. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, I found my shoes lined up neatly by the door. I never lined up my shoes. I stood there, staring down at them, and felt a cold certainty settle in my stomach. Whatever was changing in that apartment wasn't random. I didn't buy the camera because I believed in what was happening. I bought it because I needed to prove that it wasn't. That distinction mattered to me at the time. I told myself the apartment was getting to me. That isolation did strange things to your sense of routine. That stress rewired memory in subtle ways. People forgot things all the time. People misremembered. People filled in gaps without realizing it. There were studies about it, articles, entire podcasts built around how unreliable the human mind was. That thought was comforting. A faulty brain was easier to accept than an intruder I couldn't see. I ordered the camera on my phone during lunch, sitting across from Jenna, in the break room, while she complained about her upstairs neighbor learning the trumpet. "What are you getting?" she asked, glancing at my screen. "A ring cam," I said, "just for the living room." She raised an eyebrow. "Paranoid much?" "Break-ins happen," I said automatically. She shrugged. "Fair. Still creepy though." I laughed, a little too quickly. It arrived the next evening. The box sat on my kitchen counter like an accusation, while I circled it, putting off the moment I'd have to commit to this idea fully. Installing it meant admitting something was wrong, that I wasn't just being dramatic. Eventually, I plugged it in. I mounted it on a shelf in the living room, angled toward the front door and the couch. Not the hallway, not the bedrooms. I told myself I didn't want to invade anyone's privacy. That was another lie. I connected it to my phone, tested the feed, watched myself move across the screen in real time. There I was, slightly distorted by the wide-angle lens, shoulders hunched, eyes tired. Seeing myself like that made me uncomfortable, like I was watching a stranger pretend to be me. I turned it off and went to bed. That first night, nothing happened. I woke up groggy but intact. My bedroom door was still locked. My shoes were still where I'd left them. Crooked, careless, familiar. The app showed no alerts. I felt a rush of relief so strong it left me lightheaded. "See?" I said aloud, as if the apartment needed convincing. Nothing. I went to work lighter than I had in weeks. Even the hum felt less oppressive when I got home that evening, like background noise instead of a presence. I left the camera on overnight again. Still nothing. By the third night, I started to feel foolish. I considered unplugging it, embarrassed by how quickly I'd jumped to surveillance, how easily fear had pushed me into watching my own life like evidence in a case I didn't want to solve. I almost turned it off. I wish I had. The alert came at 3:42 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, sharp and sudden, yanking me out of sleep. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. My heart raced, disoriented. I squinted at the screen, motion-detected living room, my thumb hovering over it. There was a simple explanation. I knew that. HVAC shift, a passing car's headlights, the radiator clicking. Motion sensors weren't perfect. Still, my hands shook as I tapped the alert. The video loaded slowly, the buffering wheels spinning like it was taking its time on purpose. Then the footage appeared. I was standing in the hallway. Not standing. Entering. The front door closed behind me, my hand still on the knob. I was wearing the same clothes I'd worn that day. Dark jeans, gray t-shirt, my scuffed sneakers with the peeling sole on the left heel. I watched myself pause, like I always did. Keys still in hand. Then I walked into the kitchen. I sat up in bed, breath shallow, eyes locked on the screen. On the video, I filled the kettle with water. I took out 2 tea bags, my brand, my preference, and dropped them into my favorite mug. I waited. Exactly 4 minutes. I always waited 4 minutes. The figure, me, set the mug down on the coffee table and sat on the couch. Then it pulled out my phone. My phone. The same cracked corner. The same smudge across the screen I never managed to clean properly. I looked down at my hands. My phone was on the nightstand. Charging. I felt cold all at once, like my body had skipped a step and gone straight to shock. On the screen, the version of me scrolled lazily, thumb moving with familiar impatience. It leaned back into the couch, crossed one ankle over the other. My habit, my posture. I couldn't breathe. I scrubbed the timeline back and replayed it. Then again. Then again. Nothing changed. The timestamp stayed the same. 3:42 a.m. I checked my phone's location history with shaking fingers. It showed exactly what it should have. No movement, no exit, no return. I had never left the apartment. I hadn't moved from my bed. The camera footage continued. After a few minutes, the figure on the couch lifted its head and looked directly at the camera, at me. The smile came slowly, too slowly. Not a grin, not happiness, just a stretching of the mouth, wider than it needed to be, like the skin was resisting slightly. I leaned closer to my phone, my pulse roaring in my ears. In the reflection of the window behind the couch, I saw something wrong. The eyes, they blinked out of sync. One closed a fraction of a second after the other, like they weren't connected to the same system, like they were being controlled separately. My stomach twisted. The figure tilted its head, still smiling, and for a split second I thought it could see me watching it. Then the video ended. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the bed, the sound shockingly loud in the silent room. I scrambled to turn on the light, my hands clumsy, my breathing uneven. The room was empty. The door was still locked. Nothing had changed. I didn't sleep after that. I sat with my back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest, replaying the footage until my phone battery dipped into the red. When morning came, it felt unreal, like the apartment was pretending nothing had happened. I went to the bathroom on autopilot, barely registering my reflection until I noticed the cut. It was small, shallow, clean, a thin line along my cheek, just beneath the eye. I touched it gently. It didn't hurt. I didn't remember doing that. I leaned closer to the mirror, my heart pounding. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something else behind my reflection. A second image, slightly delayed, the skin at the jawline, sagging as if it didn't quite fit. I blinked. It was gone. I stepped back, breathing hard, staring at my own face like it might confess to something. I checked the camera footage again before leaving for work. Nothing else. No movement. No explanation. Just me, walking into my own apartment while I slept. That day I called in sick. I sat on the couch with the curtains drawn, watching the hallway, the closed bedroom door across from mine, the silent front door. For the first time since moving in, I said it out loud. There's someone else here. The apartment didn't respond, but the hum felt louder, closer, and somewhere deep in my chest, a terrible thought took root and refused to leave. What if I wasn't watching an intruder? What if I was watching a rehearsal? I watched the footage until I stopped seeing myself. That didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, like losing faith in a memory you've repeated too many times. At first, my brain insisted on recognition. That's you. The clothes, the posture, the way the shoulders slumped slightly forward, like I was always bracing against something invisible. But the longer I watched, the more those details felt copied instead of lived. I sat on the edge of my bed with the curtains drawn, phone plugged into the wall, replaying the clip again and again. Each time I noticed something new, something small enough that it could have been coincidence if it weren't for everything else. The way it paused in the doorway for half a second longer than I usually did. The way its head tilted when it sat on the couch, like it was adjusting to the weight of itself. The way it held my phone too carefully, fingers stiff, as if it were conscious of every point of contact. I zoomed in. The image pixelated slightly, the software struggling to sharpen something it wasn't meant to see clearly. Still, I pushed it as far as it would go, my thumb aching from the pressure. That's when I saw the smile again. I hadn't paid enough attention to it before. I'd been too focused on the impossibility of the situation, on the fact that something wearing my clothes had walked into my apartment while I slept. Now stripped of shock, the smile stood out like a flaw in an otherwise convincing forgery. It didn't reach the eyes. That sounds cliché, I know. People say it all the time about fake smiles. But this wasn't emotional distance. It wasn't a lack of warmth. It was mechanical. The mouth pulled back smoothly, evenly, like someone had memorized the shape of a smile without understanding why humans used it. The cheeks lifted just enough. The lips parted slightly, teeth visible, but not in a way that suggested happiness. More like compliance, like it knew smiling was expected. I scrubbed the timeline forward and back, stopping at the exact moment the expression formed. Frame by frame, I watched the skin around the mouth stretch. It looked tight, not strained, not painful, just a little too controlled, like fabric pulled over something rigid underneath. My throat tightened. I glanced up at the living room window across from the couch, the same one reflected in the footage. In the video, city lights glowed faintly against the glass, a dark mirror layered over the room. I zoomed in on the reflection. At first, I saw what I expected. The vague outline of the couch, the window frame, the suggestion of a face. Then I noticed the eyes. They weren't blinking together. One lid lowered a fraction of a second before the other, subtle enough that I might have missed it if I wasn't already looking for something wrong. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I replayed that part again and again, my pulse ticking faster with each loop. Blink. Pause. Blink. Not synchronized. Not human. I dropped the phone onto the bed and pressed my palms into my eyes, hard enough to see stars. My breath came shallow, uneven. "This isn't happening," I whispered. The words felt flimsy in the quiet room. I paced the apartment, every sound amplified by my own tension. Floorboards creaked under my weight. The refrigerator hummed softly. The ever-present low vibration seemed to thrum just beneath my skin. I stopped in front of the bathroom mirror. I didn't want to look. I did anyway. The face staring back at me was mine. Same tired eyes. Same faint scar near the hairline from when I tripped on a bike as a kid. Same uneven stubble I never quite managed to shave properly. I leaned closer, studying myself like I was the footage. "Smile," I said softly. My reflection obeyed. It felt normal, familiar. The muscles moved the way they always had. Still, I held it longer than usual, watching for something to slip. For a split second, I thought it did. The skin along my jawline seemed to lag behind the motion, as if it needed a moment to catch up. The sensation was so brief I almost convinced myself it hadn't happened at all. I blinked. Everything looked normal again. I straightened, breathing hard, my heart thudding against my ribs. That was when I noticed the cut. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. A thin, shallow line ran along my cheek, just beneath my eye. Clean, precise, the kind of cut you'd expect from a sharp blade, not a fingernail or an accident. I touched it gently. It didn't hurt. It didn't sting. It felt old, like it had already started healing. I tried to remember hitting my face on something, scratching myself in my sleep. Anything. There was nothing. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet, and sat down on the edge of the tub. The bathroom felt suddenly too small, the air too close. My phone buzzed, nearly dropping it as I pulled it from my pocket. A notification from the Ring app. My stomach dropped. I opened it with shaking fingers. No new footage. Just a system message. Camera offline. I stared at the words, a cold dread spreading through me. Offline meant unplugged, disconnected, or intentionally disabled. I hadn't touched it. I rushed into the living room, my pulse roaring in my ears. The camera was still on the shelf, still plugged in. The small blue light that indicated it was active was off. I reached for the cord and froze. It was warm, not hot, just recently handled. I yanked the plug from the wall and backed away, my mind racing. Had it noticed the camera? Had it noticed me noticing? That thought made my stomach churn. I spent the rest of the day jumping at shadows, flinching at every sound. When night fell, I left every light on, the apartment glowing harsh and exposed. It didn't help. The hum didn't stop. It felt closer, more insistent, like a presence no longer content to remain unseen. That night, sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of mirrors, of reflections that didn't quite line up, of smiling faces that stayed smiling long after they should have stopped. I woke before dawn with my heart racing. The echo of that too-wide smile burned into my mind. When I looked down at my hands, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A faint line around my wrist. Thin, pale, like a seam. I stared at it, my breath catching, a terrible understanding beginning to form. The thing in the apartment wasn't just copying me. It wasn't just watching. I didn't bleed. That was the part that stuck with me. When you get cut, there's supposed to be pain first, then blood. A sharp sting, a reaction, something your body does automatically, without asking permission. This wasn't like that. I noticed the seam on my wrist because it itched, just faintly, enough to make me rub at it absent-mindedly while brushing my teeth. My fingers paused when they felt the slight ridge beneath the skin, too straight, too deliberate to be a vein or a wrinkle. I lowered my arm slowly. The line wrapped all the way around my wrist. It wasn't deep, it wasn't red, it looked old, healed, like a scar that had faded so completely it had almost blended back into me. Almost. I pressed my thumb against it, harder this time. Nothing. No pain, no tenderness. My reflection watched me from the mirror, expression unreadable. "How long have you been there?" I asked my wrist. The question sounded insane even as I said it. I rolled up my sleeves, heart pounding, checking my other arm. Nothing there. Smooth skin. Normal. That should have reassured me. Instead, it made the line feel intentional. I skipped work again that day. I told my manager I was sick, which was technically true. I just didn't know how to explain the symptoms. Nausea, dizziness, the persistent feeling that my body was slightly misaligned, like a shirt buttoned wrong. I spent the morning cataloging myself. I checked every inch of my skin like I was inventorying damage after a storm. I found 2 more lines, one faint seam at the base of my neck, hidden beneath my hair, and another along my ankle, pale and precise. They weren't symmetrical. They were placed. My stomach churned. I tried to remember injuries, surgeries, childhood accidents, anything that might explain scars in those locations. There was nothing. No memories, no hospital stays, no stitches. That absence scared me more than the seams themselves. By noon, my head hurt from thinking. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum pulse gently through the apartment. It felt closer now, not louder, just nearer, like it wasn't filling the space anymore, like it was coming from inside the walls, or inside me. I checked the Ring camera again, still offline. I hadn't plugged it back in after finding the cord warm. I couldn't bring myself to. The idea of that thing noticing the camera, of watching me realize it was being watched, made my chest tighten. Instead, I set up my phone on the kitchen counter and recorded myself making lunch. It felt stupid, desperate, but I needed proof, something I could rewind, something that didn't rely on memory. I made a sandwich slowly, narrating my actions under my breath like a witness statement. I'm opening the fridge. I'm taking out the bread. 2 slices. My voice sounded strange to me, too careful, too deliberate. I watched the recording afterward. Everything matched. No missing time. No extra movements. Relief washed over me so quickly, my knees nearly buckled. Okay, I said aloud. Okay. I replayed it again. Still normal. The third time I noticed something off. Not in the video. In myself. I didn't remember recording it. The memory was there, but thin. Like a photocopy of a photocopy. The edges blurred, the center intact. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair, my breath coming fast. That's not possible, I said. The apartment didn't argue. That afternoon I tried to leave. I packed a backpack with essentials. Laptop, charger, wallet, clothes. I didn't have a plan beyond a way. A hotel, a friend's couch. Anywhere but here. My hand shook as I reached for the front door. Before I touched the knob, I heard something. Not the hum. Breathing. Slow, steady. Right on the other side of the door. I froze, my pulse roaring in my ears. Evan, I called, my voice barely more than a whisper. The breathing stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and heavy. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. My gaze slid unbidden to the closed bedroom across the hall. The other room, the one I had never entered, the one that had never opened. I didn't go near it. I sat on the couch instead, backpack still at my feet, watching the hallway like it might move when I wasn't looking. Hours passed. The light shifted from afternoon to evening, shadows stretching across the floor. At some point, exhaustion dragged me down into a shallow, restless sleep. I dreamed of hands. Not mine. Hands pressing, smoothing, pulling skin tight. Fingers tracing lines like patterns on fabric. A voice murmuring approval when things fit correctly. I woke with a gasp, my heart racing. The apartment was dark. My bedroom light was on. I was sure I'd turned it off. I stumbled to my feet, every muscle tense, and crossed the hall slowly. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. Then I saw the bed. The sheets were pulled back. Not rumpled, not disturbed. Pulled back carefully, like someone had examined them. My stomach dropped. I backed out of the room, my breath shallow, my skin crawling. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, gripping the sink until my knuckles went white. I looked up at the mirror, and this time the delay was unmistakable. My reflection lagged, just a fraction of a second, long enough to notice, long enough to know. The skin along my jaws sagged slightly before snapping back into place. I screamed. The sound tore out of me, raw and desperate, echoing off the tile. I staggered backward, nearly slipping on the wet floor. When I looked again, everything was normal. My face, my skin, perfect, too perfect. I slid down the wall and sat on the bathroom floor, shaking. The seams burned now, not with pain, but with awareness, like they'd been there all along, waiting for me to notice. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom and shoved the dresser against the door. I didn't sleep. I listened to the hum, and beneath it, so faint I might have imagined it, I heard something else. A soft, satisfied sound, like someone testing a fit and finding it acceptable. I waited until morning to call the landlord. Night made everything feel exaggerated. Thoughts stretched, shadows multiplied. I needed daylight, needed someone else's voice to anchor me to reality. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in both hands, staring at Mr. Haynes's number until it blurred. When he answered, his voice sounded exactly the way it had the first day. Flat, distracted, like I'd interrupted him mid-task. Yes, it's Charles Smith, I said quickly, from apartment 3B. A pause. Yes, he said. What can I do for you? I need to move out, I said. The words tumbled over each other. Immediately, there's something wrong with the apartment, with the arrangement. Another pause. Longer this time. That's not possible, Mr. Haynes said calmly. I'll forfeit the deposit, I said. I'll pay a penalty. Whatever you need. The lease is ironclad, he interrupted. Sublet transfer requires both tenants' signatures. My stomach tightened. I've never met the other tenant, I said. Evan Miller doesn't live here. That's incorrect, Mr. Haynes replied. You told me he works nights, that he's barely home. But he's never there. There's no food, no noise, no. Mr. Miller signed the lease, he said, and he's been a tenant in good standing for years. The way he said it, years, made my mouth go dry. I need to talk to him, I said. I need his signature. You're welcome to try, Mr. Haynes said, but I won't violate his privacy. Privacy? I snapped. He's violating mine. Silence stretched between us. Then, softly, are you feeling unwell, Mr. Smith? The question landed like a slap. I'm fine, I said, though my hands were shaking. I just want out. I suggest you take a day, Mr. Haynes said. Get some rest. People adjust. Adjust to what? I demanded. He didn't answer. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection faintly visible in the dark screen. For a moment, it looked like someone else was staring back. I ended the call. That afternoon, I packed anyway. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. I shoved clothes into bags, not folding, not organizing. My hands moved too fast, my thoughts lagging behind. The seams on my wrists burned faintly as I worked. I avoided the bathroom mirror. I avoided the hallway. I avoided the closed door across from my room like it was an open wound. By the time I finished, the apartment looked strict. Bare walls, empty shelves, the life I'd tried to build reduced to luggage. I stood by the front door, keys in my hand, and froze. The lock was already turned. I knew it was. I twisted the knob anyway. It didn't budge. My breath hitched. I tried again, harder this time. The door rattled but stayed firmly shut. Panic surged up my throat, hot and sharp. "No," I whispered. I unlocked it. The knob still wouldn't turn. I stepped back, heart pounding, and examined the door closely. The deadbolt was retracted. There was no visible reason it shouldn't open. It simply refused to. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood, breathing hard. "Please," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop it. Something shifted behind me. Not a sound. A presence. I turned slowly. The hallway was empty. The hum pulsed, steady and patient. My phone buzzed. I flinched, nearly dropping it as I pulled it out. A text message, from an unknown number. "You're rushing." My stomach dropped. Another message followed immediately. "You always rush when you're scared." My fingers hovered over the screen, numb. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "You." The lights flickered, just once. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering. My bag sat uselessly at my feet, symbols of an escape that no longer existed. "You're not real," I said aloud, my voice cracking. "You're not real." The apartment didn't contradict me. It didn't need to. That night, I sat on the floor of my bedroom, with my back against the dresser I'd shoved in front of the door. I didn't bother locking it. What was the point? Sleep came in fragments, each one worse than the last. I dreamed I was standing in the bathroom, watching myself peel skin from my face like a mask. Underneath was another face, identical, but smoother, younger, more certain. When I woke, my pillow was damp, not with sweat, with water. I touched my face, heart racing, my skin was wet. In the bathroom, the sink was dry, the faucet untouched. The mirror fogged as I leaned closer, my breath shallow. For a split second, there were two reflections. One of them smiled first. I staggered back, my vision swimming. On the counter, next to the sink, lay something I hadn't left there. A folded piece of paper. My handwriting. "You can't leave until we're finished." My knees buckled. I slid down the wall, clutching the note, my chest tight with a realization I didn't want to accept. The apartment wasn't holding me here because of the lease. It was holding me here because it needed time, and whatever was learning how to be me wasn't done yet. I didn't turn the camera back on because I wanted answers. I turned it back on because I realized something worse than being watched. I was being practiced. The note stayed in my pocket all day, folded so many times it felt soft, worn, like something I'd carried for years instead of hours. "You can't leave until we're finished." Every time my fingers brushed against it, a wave of nausea rolled through me. Finished with what? With me? I avoided the bathroom as long as I could. I washed my hands in the kitchen sink, brushed my teeth using a cup of water, my reflection replaced by the dark glass of the microwave door. It felt safer not seeing myself, but the seams burned. Not painfully, insistently. A low awareness humming beneath my skin, like nerves remembering something they weren't supposed to. By evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. I plugged the camera back in. My hands shook as I set it up again, this time angling it down the hallway, toward the bathroom, toward the mirror, toward the place everything felt wrong. The blue light blinked on. Alive. I backed away slowly, like it might react if I moved too fast. Nothing happened. For a while, I sat on the couch staring at the feed on my phone. The hallway remained empty. The bathroom door stayed closed. The hum vibrated softly through the apartment, steady as a heartbeat. Hours passed. I must have drifted off at some point, because the next thing I remember is my phone vibrating against my thigh. Motion detected. Bathroom. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I tapped the alert. The footage opened on the empty hallway, dimly lit by the living room lamp. The bathroom door stood ajar now, a thin slice of darkness cutting into the frame. Then something moved. It stepped into view slowly, carefully. It was me, not a copy, not an impression. Me. Same height, same build, same posture, same slight hitch in the left shoulder from an old sports injury I barely remembered having. It wore my clothes. It walked the way I did when I was tired. I watched it enter the bathroom and stop in front of the mirror. For a long moment, it just stood there, head tilted, studying its reflection with something like curiosity. Then it raised its hands, my hands, and pressed its fingertips against its cheeks. The skin dimpled unnaturally under the pressure, like it wasn't anchored properly beneath the surface. The fingers slid downward slowly, stretching the face with them. I gagged, clamping a hand over my mouth. On the screen, it hooked its fingers under the edge of its cheek and pulled. The skin came away with a soft, wet sound, not tearing, peeling, like wallpaper soaked too long. It worked methodically, lifting strips of skin from its face and neck, revealing what lay beneath. There was no muscle, no bone. Under the skin was another face. My face. Smoother, fresher, unmarked. The thing held my skin up in front of the mirror, examining it with careful attention. It turned it over, stretched it slightly, checking the edges. My vision blurred with tears. It looked pleased. Then it looked directly into the camera, into me. Its mouth moved. No sound came through the feed, but I didn't need to hear it to know what it was saying. My name, Charles. Slowly, deliberately, it pressed the skin back onto its face. It smoothed it into place with gentle strokes, pressing along the seams with practiced familiarity. The edges blended, the face reassembled. When it finished, it smiled. That same too-wide smile. The camera feed cut out. I screamed. The sound ripped out of me before I could stop it. Raw and animal. I stumbled backward, knocking over the coffee table, my phone skittering across the floor. I crawled after it, hands slick with sweat, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The app showed nothing. No footage. No errors. Just darkness. I slammed the phone down and ran to the bathroom, adrenaline overriding terror. I threw the door open and flicked on the light. The room was empty. The mirror reflected only me. I leaned over the sink, retching, my body shaking violently. My reflection did the same, this time in perfect sync. I gripped the edge of the counter, staring at my own face, searching for seams. "Which one of us is real?" I whispered. The reflection didn't answer, but as I stared, something shifted behind my eyes, not visually, but internally. A sudden, terrible clarity settled in my chest. The thing wasn't stealing my skin. It was maintaining it, like a costume that needed constant adjustment, like something that lived inside it, and maybe inside me. I backed away from the mirror, my breath shallow, my thoughts spiraling. That was when I noticed the floor. The bathroom tiles were damp, not with water, with something else. Clear, slightly viscous, residue. I wiped my fingers across it and stared at the sheen left behind. My skin crawled. I didn't clean it up. I locked myself in my bedroom, barricaded the door again, and sat in the dark holding my phone to my chest like it could protect me. All night, I listened. The hum was gone. In its place was something worse. Silence, the kind that comes after work is done. I stopped thinking of my body as mine, sometime after midnight. That was when the itching began. Not sharp, not painful, just persistent. A faint irritation that refused to settle, like fabric rubbing against skin in exactly the wrong way. I lay on my mattress in the dark, barricade pressed tight against the door, and tried to ignore it. I couldn't. My fingers drifted to my wrist without conscious thought. The seam felt different now, raised. I traced it slowly, my breath shallow, following the pale line all the way around. The skin there was warmer than the rest of me, as if something beneath it was active, working. "No," I whispered. The word felt small in the dark. I forced myself to sit up and turned on the bedside lamp. The sudden light made my eyes ache. I held my arm out in front of me, studying it like it belonged to someone else. The seam had widened. Not by much, a millimeter, maybe two, but it was unmistakable now. A fine separation, like two pieces that no longer fit as tightly as they once had. I pressed gently on either side. The skin shifted, just slightly. A wave of nausea rolled through me so hard, I had to clamp my jaw shut to keep from gagging. I checked my neck next. The line there had darkened, the pale scar now tinged faintly pink, as if freshly disturbed. When I tilted my head, the skin pulled in a way it never had before, resisting like it was anchored incorrectly. I didn't check my ankle. I already knew. I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking. Memories started slipping. At first, they were small things, harmless enough that I almost missed them. The name of the cafe on my corner, the code to unlock my phone, the exact wording of an email I knew I'd sent but couldn't fully recall writing. I told myself it was stress, but stress didn't explain the gaps. I closed my eyes and tried to remember my childhood bedroom, the posters on the wall, the view from the window. The image flickered. When it settled, something was wrong. The layout felt off, like the memory had been reconstructed from description instead of lived experience. Details were there, but flat, unweighted. I gasped and opened my eyes, my heart racing. "What are you doing to me?" I whispered into the empty room. No answer. I slept in fits, drifting in and out of shallow dreams where I watched myself from above. In them, hands careful, practiced, smoothed my skin, pressed seams closed, corrected tiny imperfections. Each time I tried to move, the hands held me still with gentle insistence. "Almost done," a voice murmured, not threatening, reassuring. I woke with a start just before dawn, my body slick with sweat. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The room looked unfamiliar. Wrong proportions, wrong angles. It took several long seconds before recognition set in. My room, my apartment. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood, the floor cool beneath my feet. The movement felt delayed, like my body needed an extra beat to respond to commands. In the bathroom, the mirror waited. I hesitated, hand on the doorframe, bracing myself. "You can do this," I muttered. The man in the mirror said the same thing, at the same time. My breath caught. We stared at each other. Everything looked normal at first glance. Same face, same eyes, same tired slump of the shoulders. Then I noticed the wrists. The seam on my reflection was gone. I looked down at my arm, still there, clear as day. I raised my arm. The reflection followed, but not perfectly. There was a slight lag, a hesitation so brief it might have been missed by anyone not watching for it. The reflection smiled. I hadn't. The skin around its mouth stretched too far, too smoothly, like it was being pulled into place. I stumbled back, nearly slipping. "Stop," I said hoarsely. The reflection stopped smiling. Slowly, deliberately, it raised its hand and pressed 2 fingers against the glass, right where my wrist seam should have been. Then it traced the spot. Exactly. I backed out of the bathroom and slammed the door, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear something loose inside me. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, switching to the front-facing view. The face on the screen was mine, panicked, pale, eyes bloodshot. I blinked. The face blinked with me. I turned my wrist toward the camera. The seam was visible. I exhaled shakily. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'm still here." The notification buzzed. I flinched, nearly dropping the phone. A message appeared on the screen, from the same unknown number. "You're doing great." Another message followed. "It's harder the first time." My vision swam. "What are you?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'm the part that stays." The seam burned, not painfully, decisively. I cried out, dropping the phone as I clutched my wrist. The skin tightened, the line pulling inward, sealing slightly as if responding to instruction. I felt something shift inside me. A click. Not physical, mental, like a latch closing. When the sensation passed, I lay on the floor shaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The seam had narrowed again, not gone, but improved. That terrified me more than anything else so far, because it meant it could be fixed, because it meant this had happened before. I lay there until the sun rose fully, light creeping under the bathroom door, casting long lines across the floor. By the time I stood again, I understood the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't being replaced. I was being edited, corrected, and whatever was wearing my skin wasn't trying to get rid of me. It was trying to make sure I fit.